viewers, welcome to another video in the Festival of Rail. I am Train Simulator Driver and you can find me on YouTube. During the drive of this service that I've picked from Positiavo down to Tirano on Bernina Linea, I'm going to talk to you about Train Sim World and one of the ways that DTG have moved towards a more realistic simulation while still maintaining a great game experience. So we should probably get into the cab and finish setting this up. Get our master key on, reverse it to forwards, probably headlights would be useful, wouldn't they? And perhaps we want to get our tail lights on. I'm not going to turn on the safety systems because I want to talk to you, and they'll get in the way of that a little. Let's just set the cruise control to 30 because that's our speed limit here. Get our doors unlocked, and we can sit here and wait while the passengers load now. So we can pop back out here and watch that happening, I guess. Why not? There we go. People coming and going and getting in and out and that sort of thing. So if you consider the start of the life of Train Sim World, where there's an existing successful game, and it's Train Simulator Classic, but it's reaching the end of its life. It's starting to get hard to maintain, it's getting hard to make new stuff, and its reliability is sometimes a little bit interesting, as any of us who have tried to build things in it know. And it's time for the next big thing. A new game is pitched to the management, a new hyper-realistic game with state-of-the-art graphics in a modern gaming engine with authentic rail experiences for the enthusiast, while also appealing to the mainstream simulation game player to bring in sales. The pitch succeeds, and Train Sim World is born. It's almost time to go. So the new game is designed and developed by people who are familiar with gaming, and a lot of them are rail fans. Some of them have experience in the industry. The game is launched, and it does have aspects of trains and their operation as well as gameplay features like journeys and scenarios. It finds a general acceptance in its niche market somewhere between arcade game and dedicated simulator. About 20 seconds to go. I'm just going to pop back into the cab now. Let's have a quick glance around. Our destination's already set. We've got the right pantographs up already, so we're good there. Don't need any windscreen wipers. Park brakes off. So we're pretty much ready to go. Our speed is set at 30, and one of the reasons that I picked this train is because the train more or less drives itself so that I can concentrate on chatting with you. So, time to main brakes off, and let's get some power happening. That'll do, 76%, that'll be fine. We've got 1.6 kilometres to Likert before we get there. So, if you think about when the game first started, and I was one of the early days players on this thing, there were aspects that were not as operationally prototypical as they could be. And while in a game these aspects can never be perfect for the simple reason that players would need a year of training before getting behind the controls of their first train, they can certainly be nudged along a notch or two. Some things can't be included because the operators won't allow it, as it would facilitate nefarious activity. So you'll never find out how to truly start up a train, for example. You come close, but you couldn't use the knowledge from this simulator and actually go and take a train in real life. You wouldn't get very far. So back in about 2020, the call went out via some of the streams and the Train Sim World forums for people with real rail experience who enjoy playing the game to step forward and volunteer their time in the beta program. In return for getting the latest and greatest for free, hours are committed to testing and feedback. Now it's sort of a symbiotic relationship, I suppose, because in return for getting the latest and greatest to play with, you don't have to commit any formal time or any formal hours or anything like that, but it is an expectation that you will play the game and you will give feedback where it's appropriate to give that. So we're coming into the next station now, so I'll just start to concentrate on that a little for the moment as we count down the meters. Watch our little train come past. Be curious what people think of this route, so feel free to chuck your comments into the chat. hopefully I'll be awake when this runs and we will be able to talk. So we've got about 500 meters to go. Now, obviously in the discussion today, I have...
Licourt. Prossima fermata, Licourt. Next stop, Licourt.
Licourt. I called it Licourt, but there you go. That's just me. Alright, let's reduce our power a little and get some brakes happening. As we head into Licourt station. Almost there now. There's a few people waiting for us, one or two. Excuse me looking around to the side because I'm actually watching this on a different screen, which is maybe a little bit silly of me, but that's life. Alrighty, we are pretty much there. Ooh, not a bad stop at all. I can't say they'll all be like that. So while we wait for our people to get in here, we're not here very long, we're only here for 15 seconds, so they probably want to rush a little bit. And they all go. So, obviously, I can't go into much depth in detail about how all this works, because I have a non-disclosure agreement, and that's designed to prevent leaks and ensure that players receive the news from Dovetail themselves, but I can talk in general terms. And naturally enough, I have shown this script to the DTG people, and they are okay with what I'm talking about. Let's get our doors closed, back into the cab, get some more power on. This is one of the few trains where you get some power on before you release the brakes, because when you're going into such a steep gradient, the train actually needs the power to control itself. So, back to the story as we head for Le Prézy in a couple of kilometres' time. I'm one of the people who stepped up, and I'm a steam locomotive fireman and a diesel second person on a heritage railway in Melbourne. Quite a few of you who watch my channel probably know which one it is. I've been involved in the railway since being a late teenager, and as you can probably tell, that was a little while ago. And I've done almost every job on my railway, and even in a generally non-driving role, I do get to drive the diesels from time to time, and after March, I'll be allowed to step into the steam driver's office on their side of the cab. It's a part of a fireman's career progression to learn how to drive from a practical sense, so that the challenging theory course makes more sense when it's undertaken. Now, even on a heritage railway, we have many months of theory before you're allowed to officially drive trains. So, how did the beta thing start for me? Well, it was after a very late night chat for me, I believe early in the morning for Matt, on Discord. I ended up joining the beta team. You get dropped into the deep end straight away, and you're largely left to fend for yourself. Why? Well, this encourages you to talk to the other people on the beta program and choose the things that you want to give feedback on rather than being directed. Because it's important that you're working with things that interest you rather than being forced into particular things, because when you're interested, you'll be much more committed to it, you'll do a much better job, and your playtesting and observations will be all around better. So coming down to Le Prézy now, we're still about 1.8 kilometres out. Allegra. We are actually allowed to go a little bit faster, so we're allowed to do 50 kilometres an hour here, so I should probably pick it up a little bit. We're coming down to almost at a 40 section now, actually. So even though I've only just picked up speed, we probably want to start bringing that back down to 40. I'm just using the VSOL or the cruise control to do that. It's interesting running along the river here as we progress towards Le Prézy. We're about a kilometre out now. we have got a yellow signal. I've turned the indications back on just to make this a little bit easier while I'm talking to you. And we need to come down to 30 now. This train is very responsive in how fast it speeds up and slows down, even on the steep gradients. Going through a request stop with one of the sidings. We do have a green signal at the end of the request stop, fortunately, and no other trains waiting here for us. About 900 metres out of Le Prézy now. Very briefly allowed to speed back up again before we're back down to 30, so we'll just leave it where it is. So we're not too far out from the platform now. Let's keep cruising along for a moment. So,
Nächster Halt, Le Prese. Prossima fermata, Le Prese. Next stop, Le Prese.
indeed, next stop, Le Prézy. It sounds kind of like a pizza. I'd expect this kind of pizza to have some nice spicy pepperoni sausage and some cheese, perhaps a tomato base with some garlic. That would be a Le Prézy. Yes, I know, I'm silly, but that's okay. It's because I'm an Aussie. We're all silly. Because if we're not silly, things try to kill us. Alrighty, let's start the process of coming into the station. A little bit of street running here. I often wonder how much pucker factor the drivers have driving down streets. Because you are effectively a tram, I guess, when you're running on street running rather than a train. Up that much speed train, not really. I don't want to go too hard. I know I was stopping it a little early, but you know, it's okay. Loves going hard, this train. It's like the cruise control in a 1970s car. There we go, and there is the hotel next to us. Let's get the doors open. Is of course the Hotel Le Prézy. Use that for our starting point for when we get moving again. So the beta program itself is managed through Steam, and because I'm a streamer and I make tutorials, I'm frequently bouncing between the bleeding edge development builds and the candidate and public builds. This means I'm particularly vulnerable to data corruption over profiles and settings, and people at times comment that it doesn't look like I play very much based on my levels. I think I'm about a level 7 or something at the moment, so yeah, it doesn't look like it much. But my hours suggest otherwise. It also means that I used an amazing amount of data transfer, and it's time to lock the doors and get going, which probably makes my ISP really love me. Off we go. Next stop, Miralago. I've even been shadow banned, although they wouldn't admit it, by Steam a couple of times, and I had to make contact with their support to get back the familiar download speeds, because I'm on gigabit fibre internet here, so I do have expectations of how fast it's going to go, and there are times when Steam goes really, really slowly. That's okay. Quick chat with support, and they go, no, that wouldn't happen, but about 5 minutes later it's back to normal, so you go, okay. So no, they don't do anything honest. Getting up to 35 kilometers an hour now. So in the program, we're free to choose any content to join in with feedback and the testing cycle. And at first you're a little bit greasy, like Augustus in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but you soon learn that drinking in the waterfall is not such a good idea, And you start to pick and choose the things that you'd enjoy and have some knowledge and experience to give. I have some knowledge of UK and American trains alongside Australian practices through people I know and from when I worked on the IT side of public transport as part of my real life career. So I'm both involved in actual trains on the Heritage Railway, and I've been involved in the IT side of public transport, principally around fare collection. Now, this doesn't stop me from having a go at routes that look fun with new ideas like this one, Bernina Linea, that was recently released. I do have a go at areas I'm not familiar with, such as German trains, but my feedback changes. So instead of saying things like, it should be more like, I'll ask a question and I'll say, it's like this. Is this the way it's supposed to work? I kind of expect it to be this way. And I leave it open because do I know German trains and signalling? No, not at all. Only from what I've learned through the game. And that would mean that if I was giving some feedback and I said, absolutely, it should be like this, what if I'm wrong? Maybe I am. It's been known to happen. I've had my share of tickets just closed with going, nah, it's meant to be like that. And I go, yeah, okay. So I tend to give feedback when things just seem unusual. Now, you get to build up a great relationship with the team leaders and the devs alike who share the beta space with you. And it's a good opportunity to chat with them and learn about how things should be or what the intentions are with something. Because just because, and this happens out in the real world too, you see the people on the forums and they're going, oh, this is wrong, this is completely wrong. But they don't actually know what the intention was at the time. They don't know what the developers were told to do or asked to do. So they've quite possibly delivered exactly what was intended, in which case it's not wrong at all. Might not be what someone expects, but their expectations might not match the reality either. So that's quite okay. Cruising along here down the side of the lake. Coming into Mira-Lago. We should hear the announcements fairly soon, I would think, based on the other stations. It is quite a scenic spot, perhaps a little less so because it's foggy today. What our passengers think of how things are going. Can we see any back there? I'd need to stand up, I think. Perhaps I shouldn't do that. I don't think I heard an announcement for Mira-Lago. Maybe it happened when I was outside the train, but I'm not sure. But that's probably a good example of the kind of feedback I can give, even though I'm not familiar with the route in real life. Because I can just say, hey, we didn't get an announcement, is that right? People jump in and out. So my other value to the beta is that my actual career is in IT, and over the last 35 odd years or so I've worked in IT in roles like developer and software architect, and today I'm a solution architect, and that means that I know the language and the processes of software development. I know how to log a bug in a way that gives the developer a chance of figuring out what happened and adjusting it most of the time. Almost time to go. Lock the doors. And get the brakes off, and we'll just let her rip, although we're supposed to come down to 30, and I think I have already set the cruise control for 30, so we should be fine there. cruise down through the streets. We've got a couple of kilometres until we get to Bruzio. So I know the most important thing of software development in that bugs and change requests are triaged and prioritised. And knowing this means that I don't get emotionally invested and that I can move on when something is not addressed. I know there is always a reason why. I don't necessarily get told what that reason is, but I can rest in the knowledge that people did have a think about it, and if it isn't done, that there's method to the madness. I also know that projects have budgets and time boxes. They simply can't go on forever in search of elusive perfection. It's common knowledge in the IT world that the last 20% of functionality consumes 80% of the budget. It's called the 80-20 rule. So in my real-life IT career, we often encourage our users to forego features that only a few of them will use or they only use occasionally and not develop them because it saves an enormous amount of money and time to work that way. Now, I imagine that many people think that being in beta is all chips and gravy and good times. Well, let me tell you, it ranges between highly frustrating, on days that you're thwarted from playing at all, through to getting the warm and fuzzies as you see a route coming together and the train environment, track, signalling and services and scenarios all come together and become playable. In my time in beta, I've probably learned as much again as I originally came in with. My own personal railway knowledge has grown, and the community of people I test alongside have become acquaintances, friends, and in one case even a mentor. I've also learned a lot about game development and what can and cannot be done. I've learned, for example, excuse me while I change pages, apologies, didn't memorise all of this, but should have, but didn't. This is going well, isn't it? It fell out of my little clip. Come on, get in there. It's very professional. Anyway, back to it. One of the things that's very difficult is that light is very difficult to manage in any game. I've learnt that some things are done in the name of performance, so that people's machines don't catch fire or grind at 10 FPS, and I've learned what bones are in a 3D model, for example. Now, I log a lot of bugs, and they might be actual defects, or they might be things that I think could be done differently, or things that I just wished for. Do I or anyone else in the team find everything? No, of course not. It's a big world, and every player takes a different approach, and that will bring out new things that no one has ever noticed earlier. Now, this happens in the real software world too. Your software survives the first 5 minutes before someone does something that no one thought of, and suddenly it doesn't do things correctly anymore. And that's just life, and it's just the way things go in the IT world. There's really not a lot you can do about it. The only time you do more types of planning and testing is if you're building, say, a control system for a power station or for an aircraft or something like that. And even then, we'll know from recent examples in real industry that sometimes even that doesn't happen. So it's all about money, sadly. That's just how it is. Now, the areas of feedback that I've offered over the years are things like train operators minimise their operational moves. No train will travel half a mile down the track after a set of points, just to run back again into another track through the same set of points. They stop as soon as they're clear, and then they'll run back, unless they have to move forward further to clear a signal. Drivers don't stop with their nose about to go past a red signal. They sit back a bit and they wait for the signal to change. A SPAD, or signal passed at danger, is a career-ending event in real-life railways, and it can actually be a life-ending event. So no one will risk it by being up close and personal with the signal. Anyone can make a train go forwards. The skill is in the braking. Train brakes are tricky, finicky things. A small action at the handle has a large but usually delayed reaction on the train. It's important that these operational clues are included in the way trains behave. Players often call this the mystical physics. The person who drives a route comes to know it, and this knowledge can be passed on during route development to make it accurate. This means being able to eventually drive it HUD-free after learning it adequately. So on my railway, for example, people show me pictures of trees and rocks, and I can usually tell them where it is. You do learn your route that well. Train signalling is complex, and someone who gives a given signalling system every day can smooth the way for prototypical operation of both signals and driving techniques to accommodate the aspects. If you look at some of the incredibly complex American signalling systems, there are people who are working in the beta team who actually work with them. There are drivers, or engineers as they're called in America, or perhaps operators on some surfaces and some systems. Did I just go through a station? I think I did. I think I just went through Bruzio. Let me just have a... I'm just stopping. Let me have a quick look on the map. Oh no, we're not quite there yet. We're just going around the corner. That's fair enough. Okay, I didn't think I'd missed it. But anyway, there are people like that working in the game, and they make it better. They make it much more realistic. So some of those strange things that the signalling system seems to do, they're actually real. That's the way it happens in real life. Yeah, they're coming into Bruzio now. Stopped just a tad early again. It's difficult to talk to you and do this at the same time, to be honest. I completely underestimated just how difficult this would actually be. Just get down to the stopping point, because we're almost at the end of the route too. Here at Bruzio, because we'll have, shortly after this, we'll have the big spiral viaduct, which looks remarkably like a model railway. It's the kind of thing you'd expect to see there. Let's crawl down a little bit further, because it probably won't recognise me stopping that far back. And there we go. Let's pop some brakes on there. Let's see if it recognises 20 metres out. Will that do? Will that do? No, it won't. Okay, we need to be more exact. That's fine. How about this then? Surely this will work. Hey! And better open the doors too. So, this sort of knowledge includes things like the signal aspects rarely change quickly. If a signalman throws a set of points, otherwise known as a switch, and pulls off the signal, that will happen almost immediately. But if that same signalman were to drop the signal back and try to throw the points the other way, then a timeout will come into play, and it's designed to prevent changing points under a train. Only people involved in signalling would actually know this. Other people probably just think that the signalman or the game is a bit slow, but no, it's actually deliberate. It's meant to work that way. 6:47. I am a little bit late, aren't I? It's unfortunate. It's probably because I talk too much. It's time to lock the doors too, so I should watch what I'm doing instead of talking to you. But, you know, the point of this is to talk to you. Alrighty, let's depart Bruzio. Now, where I personally like to influence these days is mostly in the scenarios, by offering suggestions and proposing changes to make the content more prototypical and more operationally correct in a general sense. Now, why in a general sense? It's because every railway has its operating rules, and while there are often similarities from one railway to another, there are also significant differences. Something that happens on my railway might be unique and not happen anywhere else. Something that happens in or commonplace in Germany, such as high-speed freight, doesn't happen in the USA. Giant long trains from the USA don't happen anywhere else in the world at all, although other ideas like trailer trains and double-stack container freight are becoming common in all theatres. Did you know that supposedly modern ideas like containerisation actually date back to the 1800s, prior to the existence of railways? Interesting stuff. So, basically in the beta world, I'm just a cog in the machine. I'm not important, I'm not unimportant, I'm one of many. We're kind of like the Borg, I suppose. So, my views are no more and no less valuable than anyone else's in the group. And there are things here and there in the game that I've influenced, as there is with every beta tester, and I'm not going to call anything or anyone out because our effort is a combined effort, and for the most part we all beaver away in anonymity from the general players. I'm one of the weird ones where people know I'm in the program, and that's because I talk about things like this sometimes. So, if you wouldn't mind, as we approach the end of this route, because we're coming down through the spiral now, which is quite cool and quite picturesque. I actually enjoy this part of the game, and I just like watching it, to be honest. It's kind of fun. You see it come down off the hill. I would like for you to consider and just take a moment of thanks for the members of the beta team who give their time freely. This feels like we're going way too fast, but I don't know that we are. I think we're actually doing okay. We're coming up to Campascio. But I'd like to just have a few moments to give some thanks to the people who give an enormous number of hours, absolutely enormous number of hours in combination, and they give their time freely, and they help influence and improve the game so that it's in a decent playable state when you get it. I'd also personally like to make a nod of thanks to the developers, producers, and others involved in the development who put up with me. And I'd also like to offer a bit of a nod of thanks to the community team, Alex, JD, Jan, and Jamie, who look after the ambassadors and give us opportunities like this one. So if you've made it this far, you're probably kind of interested in the kind of way I play the game. And perhaps you might consider subscribing to my channel. I'd certainly appreciate it. So, interested in what you think of what I've talked about today in how things happened in a very, very general sort of way in the beta program, because as I mentioned earlier, I simply can't talk about it in detail, and that's just to ensure that Dovetail control the narrative about the game, so that we don't accidentally reveal things that aren't public yet. So I never talk about the actual testing I'm doing, and I never talk about any of the routes or trains that I'm involved in. But in this general sense, good. And I've been fortunate to be able to use Benina Lini for this, because of course the train does for the most part drive itself. You've got the lovely cruise control. You can kind of take over and drive it manually if you want to, because to do that all you need to do is put the cruise control up to the maximum speed it goes at, which is 120 kilometers an hour, and then you can just use the throttle and brakes freely because it won't step in. This thing does have the most amazing brakes. Slightly over that time, which is sad because I was actually watching, unlike the last times where I wasn't. Oh well, that's life. But anyway, generally speaking, I just have a lot of fun playing this game, and I just like taking part and being useful, so I like to help out. Almost got everybody loaded in. Looks like the last few people don't actually want to ride my train. They've probably seen the way I drive. I have. Alright then, off we go to Campo Cologno. I'm sure I butchered that pronunciation horribly. Excuse me while I have a little drink of water. And cruise down the final part of the run. I quite enjoy the advances in the landscaping techniques that have come into the game recently with LiDAR-based landscapes, as it means very realistic formations that match reality quite nicely. There's still things that I'd love to see be a little bit different, so like everybody, hop-in bugs me, and the way the lighting works on distant trees, for example, quite a lot of the trees up there are white, and as you get closer to them they darken up. I would prefer that not to happen, but that's, you know, it's okay. Does it interfere with the ability to play the game? No. It's just one of those things that I think would make it next level. Got a red signal coming up. I've actually normally taken to playing with the signal aspects turned off on the track monitor, but because I was going to be talking to you, I popped them back on for this run. I quite like the different options that you can actually have with the HUD to control the game in the way it speaks to you, in the way that you want to be spoken to. So you can get lots and lots of extra information from the HUD, or you can get less, or almost none, or even none, if that's what you want to do. So if you've learned the route well enough, you can actually turn the HUD off and just drive, because all the information you need is present on the displays of the train and is present in the timetable and the signals and the signage along the route. The scenario to put your carriages up there in one of them is quite challenging, I have to say. Campo Cologno. I like the way the tracks run through the platform and just disappear off into the street. I reckon that's really cool. Because it's one of those things that you look at and you go, that's not real. And then you go and look in Street View or something like that and go, well, actually it is. So that's an area of feedback. It's always worth checking your stuff before you actually offer some feedback. Hey mate, your hat's on backwards. You can tell my generation there that I don't like people who wear their hats backwards. It's actually funny. I've watched a guy at a tennis match who was sitting there like this, shading his eyes, trying to keep the sun out of his eyes, and he had a baseball cap and it was backwards. If he just turned it around the right way, he wouldn't have needed to do this. But you know, that's just life. We'll come into the street running section again shortly. A longer area of it as we come down into Toronto. I think Toronto's our next final stop, if I remember correctly. It is indeed. So we'll be there in a few minutes. It does take a little while because, of course, the street running bit's just a little bit on the slow side. That's okay. I have to wait 5 seconds. Oh no! Really? I'm going to close the doors anyway. Well, by the timetable I'm allowed to leave, but I have a red signal down there. So I'm wondering if there's another train coming. Let's just have a quick look at the map. Probably got a train in the long single track section. We do, look at that. So we're going to have a little bit of a wait here while we wait for that one to come up. Let's go and find it. Why not? Fly down through the foothills of Toronto and come and find our train. I can hear it, so we're getting close. Here it is. Well, I think given that this train has only just left Toronto and is coming up into the foothills here, I think we might actually end this video here, because I can't imagine that you want to sit there for 10 minutes and watch me do the railways hurry up and wait thing, because that's not going to be very exciting. So thanks again to the community team for putting on the Festival of Rail. It's quite a good time each year. Make sure you do check out the accompanying sales, because there are some good discounts to be had in both Train Sim World and Train Simulator Classic. And I hope you enjoy the festival and have a good time. If you've got any questions or comments on my videos, feel free to pop over onto my channel and let me know, because I probably won't see them if you ask here. So if you're in the chat and I'm awake, I'll be in the chat too, happy to chat. But if you're wanting to have some more detailed conversation, then head over to my channel. There's a link to my Discord there, so you can jump in and join me over there. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy the remainder of the Festival of Rail. And it's been a cool opportunity and lovely to produce some content for you. So I am Train Simulator Driver, and you can find me on YouTube as we watch this train head up towards Hospicio. Alrighty, have fun folks. See you later.
We played a game.